Welcome to the DWI Guy podcast, where defenders of the Constitution assemble to prepare for courtroom battle and firm owners gather to develop marketing strategies that will revolutionize the practice of criminal defense. Here's your host, the DWI Guy, Jake Minnick.
Hello, fellow freedom fighters, and welcome to episode 197 of the DWI Guy podcast. On today's episode, we are talking about something that is so important that I am suggesting that our entire team, admin, attorneys, everybody, listen to this podcast. So I believe this information is so important that I am willing to put an hour of my team's time individually into taking away the principles of this episode. So again, I'll just put that out there as a call to action to really sit down and soak in this information. If you want to improve your financial situation, if you want to be able to charge more for your cases, but more importantly, if you want to have a bigger impact on your clients' lives, then this episode is for you. And again, I hope you take some time to really think through how to implement these ideas into your practice. So when a client contacts us, there is a whole laundry list of different anxieties, questions, and concerns that are floating through our clients' heads. And we identify these. We know that they exist. We've heard them expressed. We know them to be implicitly there in certain situations. How much jail time, if any, am I looking at? Am I going to be on probation? Am I going to be drug screened? Is my license going to be taken away? Am I going to lose my job? All of these are very serious concerns that our clients are facing. But let me suggest to you that I think that there is a more deep-rooted concern in somebody's life at issue when they call in. And this anxiety, this fear is often not explicitly expressed by our client, is not something that they, I think, are conscious of as a concern factor. If you ask them, what are you most worried about related to your case? I don't think that they would share this as a concern factor, but let me tell you, I think that most, if not every client calling in is wrestling with this concern. And that is, what are other people going to think about the fact that I got a DWI charge? What are other people going to think about the fact that I got a DWI charge? Now, when it comes to our practice at Minnick Law, we have three brand promises, three things that we are looking to kind of be part of our identity when it comes to our client interaction. And that is constant communication. We've got a plan, and we've got your back. Now, what does it mean to have somebody's back? You know, when somebody gets into a difficult situation, when somebody is going through a difficult place, they don't want to be alone, right? If you're facing a real obstacle, most people don't want to face that obstacle alone. They want somebody that's got their back. They want somebody that's going to protect them from whatever harm is coming their way. So, what are we protecting clients from? As much as the jail consequences, probation consequences, driving consequences, employment consequences, we are protecting them from embarrassment. We are protecting them from public humiliation. Okay. And so I think many clients that call in have this unexpressed, maybe subconscious, subliminal fear of what are other people thinking about me. And so in this episode, I'm going to go through how we know that clients uh, are feeling this, how we know that there is that kind of unexpressed anxiety about what other people are thinking about the fact that they've been charged with this crime. We are going to talk about specifically how they are kind of hearing this in their own head. And then I'm going to give you a pretty extensive laundry list, but I will say not exclusive. I came up with this list actually in a pretty short period of time. So definitely something that you can be adding on to, but a pretty healthy laundry list of ways to communicate to the client that you have their back and to basically help them put their best foot forward so they can avoid public embarrassment and humiliation. And I think that this is essential to both selling your services and delivering an amazing experience, a wow experience to your clients. So, why do we think that people care about what other people are thinking about? You see all these amazing I read a lot of motivational quotes, and I was actually even looking up quotes before I got on the episode about, what do other people think? And you get all of these motivational quotes that are basically like, don't let other people, you know, uh, don't let other people's thoughts or words hurt you. Don't worry about what other people think. If you are concerned with what other people think about you, then you are their prisoner. There's all these great like motivational quotes about basically not caring what other people think. And they sound great, but they are complete BS. Human beings care about what other people think. This is I would say true across the board. And again, maybe there are some either people that just do not have like a kind of normal understanding of like social norms or kind of anxiety provoking situations, and so they just don't even kind of get affected by what other people are thinking. Um, or maybe there are some true lone wolves that are just like so in their own space, have reached a certain level of success, whatever it might be, that they truly don't care what other people think. They just truly don't have any concern. They're not playing to anybody. The vast majority of us care what other people think. I listened to a lot of podcasts, and I have heard a number of big big personalities in the podcast space that basically say they do not read comments to their social media posts because of the negative energy that trolls or haters that are putting negative comments on their posts. They just don't go and check because they really don't want to be sucked into that negativity. They care what those people are posting, what complete strangers are posting. And again, these are people that are extremely successful in the public space all the time, are used to this. And again, I've heard this time and again on podcasts that people just say, I wanted to believe that I didn't care what other people think, or I'd say that I didn't care what other people think. And then I would go into into my comments section. I would read these comments. I'd get sucked in. I would start, responding in this, with this kind of vitriol response. I mean, just a real testament to the power that negative feedback from other people, how that can kind of impact our own psyche. We are wired as human beings to be in a social situation. We are societal animals, social beings, and so we have to work with other human beings to be successful in the vast majority of instances. And we want to put our best foot forward. We want people to know how we are contributing to the group, what we have to offer, what we are bringing to the table. We are looking for that social status as social creatures. I was just, as I was sitting up in upstairs office, writing this out, I was looking at like an old, I think like Renaissance picture, like religious picture, uh, triptych. I believe it's of like heaven, purgatory, and hell. Although, to be honest about it, I was like having a difficult time as I started looking at this thing, interpreting what the heck was going on in this picture. But everybody in the picture was naked, and you see this a lot in art. Everybody in the famous pieces, religious pieces, whatever it might be. People painted in the nude, angels painted in the nude, people painted in the nude. And what is strange about that, strange about looking at a picture where everybody is naked, is that it is just so abnormal to see that. Now, why does everybody not just in reality walk around naked? Why is that not like our the way that we experience the world? Now, right now it's freezing dang cold outside. I mean, it's dead of winter. It's cold outside. So there's a reason why people are wearing clothing from a kind of environmental standpoint. But in the middle of summer, why are people not just walking around naked? Well, it's because we care about what other people think of us. Walking around naked would be embarrassing. It would be humiliating, right? It's not something that is in the societal norm in our country. So people don't walk around wearing clothes because it's illegal to be naked, although that may be the case. They walk around clothed because they care about what other people think. That at like the most basic level, you've got the story of Adam and Eve. What do they do immediately after biting the apple and basically sinning against God? They immediately cover themselves. Why? Because they're embarrassed. They're embarrassed by their actions. They are embarrassed to kind of have themselves exposed to one another. And when somebody gets a DWI, they are worried about that exposure. Now, how do we know this? How do we know that clients are worried about this exposure? Because a lot of times they're not going to say in the consult, unprompted, I am worried about what other people are going to think about the fact that I got this charge. Again, even if you ask them, what is your biggest concern about this situation? They're not going to say, I'm worried about what other people are going to think about the fact that I got a DWI. They're going to say, I'm worried about jail time, worried about the impact this is going to have on my job. They might say, I'm worried about the impact this is going to have on my, they might say something to the effect of like, I'm worried about how this is going to like impact my relationship at home with my spouse. So that's somewhat in that same genre. But again, this to me is one of the biggest anxieties of people. And if you can speak to this anxiety, even if it's unvoiced by the client, you have a massive advantage of capturing this individual as a client, and thereby being able to actually help them. You're going to have a much higher close rate in your consultation, and you're going to be able to provide a better service to your client if you understand this. So, how do we know that clients are concerned about what other people think? The number one way, I'm going to tell you right now that you know this, is that they lie to us. They lie to us. They're calling us to have us help them with their situation, to help them get out of this problem, to deal with this bad decision. And what do they do as opposed to kind of providing us with all of the tools necessary to go to war for them? They lie to us. Why do they lie to us about their situation? Why do they, you know, not disclose embarrassing facts about the uh, DWI situation? Maybe it's not, how rude they were to the police officer, the fact that they, fell asleep in the officer's patrol vehicle, urinated themselves, whatever it might be, right? Like, this is not something that you typically learn about in the consultation, even if you discover it later. And obviously the person knows that this was part of the circumstance. So again, this is not every client, but there is a number of clients that basically downplay the circumstances of the charge. Why do they do that? Well, maybe partially it's because they think that if you believe as the attorney that their case is better and don't go in thinking, well, my client is guilty, that you might fight harder for them. That might be part of the mental gymnastics or equation, but I think that that's definitely not the major player in downgrading the situation, the circumstances. I think that the major reason that clients lie to you in the initial consultation is because they are embarrassed about the situation that they put themselves in. And so they try to downplay the amount of alcohol that they consumed. They try to downplay the way that they performed on field sobriety tests, the basis for the stop, the way that they were communicating with the officer. They try to downplay any negative facts. Why? Because they're human beings. They care what you, the lawyer, think about them. It is awful having to relive this circumstance with another person. They don't want to go. There's very few human beings that want to call 5 lawyers and in detail explain to each of those 5 people the DWI arrest that they just went through. That's why if you have a client and you do a thorough consultation, a long consultation where you've asked a lot of questions and gotten to really know that client as a person and the situation that they got themselves into, you're going to have a much higher rate of being retained, because the client doesn't want to reshare that long drawn out experience with numerous people, even if it's to get free legal advice. They don't want to relive that, and nobody can blame them for that. But you're getting lied to as a defense lawyer, not because the client doesn't trust you primarily. It's because the client is embarrassed and they don't want to share any negative facts about the circumstances with anyone, including the person that they are going to pay money to help them. So that's the number one sign to me that we know that clients are concerned with what other people think, because they lie to us about the situation. Also, they might say something like, I don't want people to think I'm a bad parent. I've heard that a number of times in a consultation, sometimes where there's been a kid in the car and the person is charged with DWI that's going to be aggravated because of the kids being in the vehicle. Sometimes they've also been charged with misdemeanor child abuse related to having the kid in the car. And that is the primary concern. I don't want other people to think that I'm a bad parent. What is the judge going to think about the fact that there's what was a kid in the car with me? What are other people going to be thinking about my parenting skills? They might say, I'm not a drunk, right? This happened, this is out of character. I don't go out drinking often. Why are they telling you that? Because it doesn't make any difference in terms of the circumstances of the charge, whether they go drinking every single day and they are basically hammered 100% of the time, or this was their, mom's night out for the first time in 6 months. Doesn't make any difference in terms of whether or not the charge is DWI. So why are they sharing this with you? It's because they want you to know that they are not a person that is a addict, that is a drunk, that has a substance use problem. That matters. They care what you think about them. They might ask, how many people are typically in the courtroom? What does the courtroom look like, feel like, right? How many other eyes are going to be on me when this case is handled? Might ask a question of how long does this stay on my record? Well, does that matter unless you care what other people think, whether that's a future employer, whether that's other people that might do a background check? The only reason that people want it off their record is because they care what other people think. Can't tell you how many people I've done expunctions for where I ask them, do you work currently? And the answer is no. And it's like, well, what are you getting the expunction for? Nobody is looking at this damn thing. Like, I mean, there's nobody that is like checking the courthouse records to see if you, John Doe, have a DWI from 15 years ago or a, misdemeanor marijuana charge from 20 years ago. Nobody cares, outside of potentially future employers. But I've had plenty of clients that are not employed, not looking to get hired, or are employed but not looking to change jobs, and they just say, I want this thing removed from my record, right? They're doing that because they care what other people think. They might ask, how do I get this? How do I get my mugshot or information about the charge off the internet? Right? Again, maybe this is for job purposes or future educational. They're applying to go to school somewhere, applying for jobs. So there is like a practical level to getting this off. But I think more importantly, it's just like I don't want other people being able to search my name and find this out about me. It's a concern about what other people think about the fact that they got this charge. Sometimes they'll ask this, is the court going to notify my employer? And again, there might be a practical aspect to that question of like, I'm worried I'm going to lose my job if my employer finds out. But I think that if you kind of dug deep enough, a lot of people in their current line of work would say, hey, I know somebody else at my company that's had a DWI, they didn't get fired, or just out of common sense, kind of look at where they are and just say, DWI is likely not going to impact my employment status or remaining employed. So why are they asking that question? Because they want to know when they have to be concerned about what other coworkers, supervisors, boss, what those people are going to think about them should they discover that they got a DWI charge. That's a major point of friction. They might start telling you stories, success stories about their career, their grades, their public service, the way that they give back, the kids that they've raised, where their kids have gone to school. Why are they telling you this? Why are they telling you this during the initial consultation? Because they want you to think highly of them. They want you to not think this person is a loser because they got a DWI charge. They want to tell you through these positive moments in their life why you should think well of them. They might explain bad circumstances going on in their life and effectively why you shouldn't hold a DWI against them. They were going through a divorce. They recently lost a parent. They, just lost their job. Their girlfriend broke up with them, whatever it might be, whatever emotional turmoil was going on that led to this to this circumstance. They might share that. Why? Again, why are they giving you those circumstantial explanations? It doesn't change the fact that they are, facing this DWI, and potentially they're almost like saying it's legitimate that I'm standing here from a legal standpoint, but I want to tell you how I got here because there's a legitimate explanation as to how I got into this position, and I want you as my lawyer to know that I'm a good human being. We care about what other people think. Whatever the motivational quotes are, we care what other people think. So what is a client worried about other people thinking? And I'm going to have to give a shout out here as to this list. Jesse Fry, who is recently on the podcast, shared with me basically what he calls a buyer profile. He did this for DWI case, and it's basically to kind of help you get inside the psyche of a potential client. If you are interested in getting a buyer profile from Jesse as to any charge type, or if you're engaged in other practice areas, this buyer profile that Jesse sent me is incredible. So reach out to Jesse, ask him to kind of walk through what a buyer profile would look like for your particular client type, practice area, and then how you can use that buyer profile to elevate your client experience, and for other purposes as well. But this list of a few questions comes from the buyer profile that Jesse sent me. What do clients worry people are thinking? Well, maybe they're worried that their spouse is thinking, why weren't you more responsible? Why weren't you more responsible? They might be worried that a friend is looking at them saying, I can't believe you let this happen. They might be worried that a coworker or supervisor is looking at them saying, this isn't a good look for our company. And you're a disappointment. They could be worried about a parent, right? We've got a lot of 20, 21, 22-year-old clients that get a criminal charge of some type, including a DWI. And they're worried that, are my parents going to get a letter about this? Are my parents going to find out? What are they worried about their parents? Well, maybe they're worried that their parents are going to get mad at them, but I think a lot of times it's, their parents thinking, we raised you better, right? We raised you to be a more responsible adult than you've proved yourself to be. Again, you're a disappointment. So those kind of thoughts came again from full credit to Jesse Fry. And I think that, again, clients aren't expressing this in the consultation. They're not telling you, here's what I'm worried that my spouse, my coworkers, my boss, my kids, here's what I'm worried about these other people in my life thinking about me. But they are very worried about those thoughts from the people closest in their lives. They also may be worried about what complete strangers think about them. People online, people in the courtroom that they don't even know. So this is front and center, a humongous source of anxiety. So how do we communicate to clients that we are going to address this anxiety that A, they don't know exists, and B, they have not voiced to us? How do we communicate to them that we are going to have their back and basically remove embarrassment and humiliation in every place possible? Well, this is going to happen during the initial consultation in terms of communicating. This is what the path looks like. And then you're going to actually have to follow through on that path. So again, this is in no specific order, but a laundry list of ways that we can help communicate to the client that we've got their back, that we are going to make them look good in front of other people when we can, and eliminate an embarrassment and humiliation when we can. During the consult, if you're, so I'm just going to, again, I'm going to run through this. This is not like a numeric list. I'm just going to go through this. During the consult, if your client tells you something positive about their self, their career, their where they've gone to school, the degrees that they have, how many kids that they have, their economic status, their job, whatever it might be, if they share something positive about themselves, affirm that. When it's your turn to talk, so to speak, in the consultation, say, John, it sounds like you've got a great family. It sounds like you got a loving wife, and some amazing kids that you're doing a great job to raise. So again, well done on that front, and we're going to do everything that we can in our power to make sure that you can continue to be the great husband and father that you have been up to this point. We're going to do everything in our power to make sure that doesn't change, that you're going to be able to provide for your family, that you're going to be able to be, again, you don't have to say it this way, but, that you continue to be a good role model for your family. Affirm the things that are going well in your client's life that they have shared with you to communicate, hey, I'm a good person. Affirm those. Another tip. Discuss ways to keep your client out of court. This is huge. Discuss ways to keep your client out of court. So how can we eliminate the embarrassment of being in the courtroom? When a client, I think that oftentimes we think, clients don't want to go to court, and maybe this just stems from like there probably some situations like, well, I don't know. Actually, I think this kind of goes beyond just like the DWI realm into even minor traffic tickets. But we always, I think, as attorneys, believe that people don't want to go to court because it's a waste of their time. Like they're going to have to take off work. They're going to miss, important other obligations that they have, which is true. And there is a kind of practical benefit to not having to go to court. But beyond that, there is the psychological benefit of not having to appear in front of other people for something that is humiliating. When a client goes into the courtroom, as they walk in, many times their name is posted on the outside of the courtroom doors with their charge beside it, right? They walk into the courtroom. There is, other people that are in the gallery. There's people that are up front. There is a sheriff with a gun beside them. There is a person in a black robe sitting on a pedestal. It's an intimidating place to be. And at some point, their name is called, and they are asked to stand up in front of everybody and say who their lawyer is. And in the criminal context, everybody understands this person did something wrong. So your client might be aware, wary of who else is in the courtroom that day, who else might show up to court that day. In certain situations, if it's an initial appearance, maybe they get not only their name called, but they walk up in front of the judge, and the judge basically says, Mr. Smith, you've been charged with driving while impaired. This carries with it a maximum possible punishment of 36 months. Now, in front of a whole room of people, they have been called. And again, obviously, this doesn't mean anything in terms of actual guilt or whether they're guilty in the eyes of the law. But in front of a whole room full of people, for practical purposes, they've been called a drunk driver, and they are looking at 3 years in jail. Think about that. Think about the impact that has for somebody in terms of the psychological impact. This whole room of people knows that I am charged with drunk driving, and I'm looking at 3 years in jail. It's a big deal to have to go in the courtroom. And there's a bunch of humiliation, anxiety, embarrassment that comes with walking through those doors and standing up when your name is called. So if there's any way to get your client excused from court, put that out there as an option. You know, uh, hey, Molly, I want to tell you kind of what our strategy is. Once we get the discovery back, if there is nothing for us to fight, we want to cause, as little embarrassment as possible for you in this situation. And there may be some ways that we could keep you from having to actually enter this plea in front of a lot of people in the courtroom. We could, maybe in your particular jurisdiction, for people that are out of the area or maybe even in the area, maybe you can do a plea by waiver, even on something like a DWI. That's one way to keep a client out of court. Maybe, you have traffic days or administrative days in your county where there are less cases on the calendar, or maybe a ton of cases, but few actual people in the courtroom. There's, lighter days and heavier days. And so you say, hey, this is a drop by court date on this morning. If you come, at 11 o'clock a.m., there's not going to be a calendar call. You'll probably be one of only 10 people in the courtroom. It's minimal. We want to do this when there's not a lot of other people in the courtroom. And so this is kind of what our game plan is going to be. I think we really underestimate how much of a impact that type of conversation is. That's a differentiator. Nobody's talking about that with their client. Here's how we're going to avoid embarrassment in the courtroom. If you can get your client excused from court for several court dates, until discovery comes back, let them know that. Let them know, hey, part of our goal is to save your time when it comes to being in the courtroom. If we can save you the embarrassment of being in the courthouse and the time that you have of being in the courthouse, then we're going to do everything in our power to get you excused until it's absolutely necessary that you have to be present. I am telling you that this is a valuable, valuable service that you are offering to the client. This is a differentiating service that you're offering to the client. In the kind of Minnick law terminology, this is the wow experience that you are bringing when you're telling the client, this is how we're going to minimize your time in the courtroom, not only so you can do more important things, but so that you can spend, so that you don't have to be in front of other people, in front of the judge, with a DA looking at you in the courtroom. We're going to try to eliminate as much court time as possible, eliminate that embarrassment, eliminate that anxiety. Another tip on how we can communicate, we have our clients back. In sentencing, this is huge. In sentencing, and I'm going to tell you that I have done a really terrible job as a practitioner on this front in the vast majority of cases that I've handled. In sentencing, communicate the good things in your client's life. Spend some time giving a character expose of your client in a sentencing hearing. I think part of my reason for doing poorly on this front is that I kind of oftentimes don't want to waste the judge's time. So if I know a certain judge is going to give a low sentence level, and I just need to give the bare bone mitigating factors so that the judge can basically give the minimum sentence, and then we move on. I don't want to waste the judge's time, the court's time. So I think that that's kind of been the major reason why I've been short-winded sometimes in a sentencing hearing. But this is the time to communicate how good of a person your client is. That's what the sentencing hearing is for from a defense standpoint. The sentencing hearing is not something to just look at as, how do I minimize the court consequences that are going to be thrown at my client? It's a positive opportunity to shed positive character evidence on your client. Again, your client cares what other people think about them. So if you are in the courtroom going to absolute war to let the judge know what an extraordinary person that your client is and how this situation is completely out of character, or how they, even if it's a second or a third DWI, how they have overcome this uh, uh, circumstance. What are they doing to address the circumstance? The amount of time and energy that they are putting in to make sure things get right. If you can really showcase that to the judge, you are going to make a incredible difference in your client's feeling of how the representation went. The outcome at the end of the day may be the exact same, whether you're long-winded or short-winded. It may be 24 hours of community service, get an alcohol assessment, complete any recommended treatment, unsupervised probation for 12 months, blah, 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 blah. It may be the exact same thing from the judge's mouth, regardless of how long-winded that you have been. But your client will remember how long-winded you were for them, how you went to war for them as a human being, how you showed the judge, how you showed the people in the courtroom what a great person that they are. This is, man, I'm telling you right now, this is a moment that I have missed out on many times in my practice, and I really regret. Again, the outcomes, I've where I am nervous about the outcome, I go long-winded. But there have been too many times when I was not really worried about a sentence kind of beyond the minimum allowed, that I missed that character opportunity. I missed out on being able to showcase, look at all the great things that my client has done. Don't miss out on that. When you have the initial consultation, communicate that to the client. I want to get to know you as a person. I want to understand, some of the things that you are doing currently outside of this charge. And then, hey, I appreciate you telling me a little bit about your job, about this volunteer opportunity that you're a part of. These are the kind of things that I plan on telling the judge if it gets to a sentencing situation. In the consultation, you can communicate to the client, this is how the case is going to go. This is the kind of thing that the judge wants to hear. Another point, how do you communicate that you've got your client's back and that you understand that it's important what other people are thinking about us? Share resources about removing mugshots. There's all kind of great resources on the internet. Share that information with clients. If you have a case with sensitive information or particularly bad factual scenario, ask to approach the judge with the DA and explain a little bit about what was going on at the time. If there's specific facts that maybe you can keep out of out of the factual scenario by stipulating, can you stipulate to a factual basis and avoid the DA, basically reading, Your Honor, this occurred on April 26th. The defendant was weaving all over the road, hit a marked police vehicle, got out of the vehicle, vomited on himself, swore at the police officer several times, did poorly on field sobriety tests, and ultimately refused chemical analysis. Can you just ask, to stipulate to the factual basis? Your Honor, we're here to enter a plea. We're stipulating to the factual basis. Don't require anything to be given by the state. And again, some judges may say, no, we need to have the factual basis read in order to enter the plea. But again, maybe it's just like, fine, you're pleading guilty. You've stipulated there's a factual basis. Here we go. Or maybe you can just say, hey, Mr. DA, you can read as much or as little of the report as you want, but we're stipulating my client was driving a vehicle on a public highway while impaired. You want to give the the facts that indicate that those things are present, we can stipulate to the number. Can you stipulate to have some of those negative facts not read aloud in open court? Again, if you approach the DA, approach with the DA and ask to approach the bench, if you give an overview of your case, even if it's not to kind of, figure out if there's going to be an issue with sentencing. And I have asked on many, many a case before sentencing to approach the judge for a whole variety of different reasons. I think judges a lot of times appreciate having a little bit of a warning about the situation that they're about to kind of be asked to give judgment on, especially if it's a complicated, like aggravated DWI, A1, level 1, whatever it might be. If there's inpatient treatment, continuous alcohol monitoring. If some of these things are in play, I think a lot of judges like having a heads up of, hey, here's kind of the complicating circumstances. But even in just going and approaching and giving the overview of here's what happened in this case, if you reveal some of those bad facts in the kind of bench conference, then you may minimize the amount of energy the DA is putting into that in kind of open court once you go back to your table. So again, this is just something to be thinking about. How can I minimize kind of the negative facts that are expressed in open court so that my client does not have to undergo that embarrassment? Another tip: tell your client about the plethora of professionals you've represented on a DWI. I'll tell people that are worried about the impact this is going to have on their career. I'll say, hey, I've represented doctors, lawyers, accountants, bankers, people in the military. I mean, I've represented people of all walks of life that have got charged with a DWI. And, for the most part, again, obviously military maybe doesn't fall on this list, but for the most part, in terms of those other professionals, generally speaking, there is not a massive kind of career blockage in getting a DWI for those other areas. So again, tell your client, it may be helpful to communicate, look, I know you're worried about how other people are perceiving you. This happens to a lot of people in all walks of life with all type of, career situation and advancement on the career path happens to everybody. Get your client prepped. So another tip here, get your client prepped. If you want to look good in front of the court, and more importantly, you want your client to look good in front of the court, tell them in the initial consultation, I'm going to give you the plan to go into the courtroom the most prepared that you can possibly be. When we walk into the courtroom months down the road from now, you are going to be the best dressed, the most prepared person in that courtroom. If you followed my advice and you do the things that I tell you to do, you're going to be the best dressed, most prepared person in the courtroom, and it's going to show. When compared with everybody else, it's going to show. Now, if you actually deliver on that and you give your client the laundry list of things to be working on, and then you go up in a sentencing hearing and you say, Your Honor, here is the amazing list of accomplishments that my client has achieved in their life. Here's how they've responded to this charge. Here's the list of items that they have taken care of without having been, previously court ordered to do. They walk in here ready as they possibly could be to take care of this situation. That is going to show. The client will notice that they are more prepared than other people in the courtroom. And that's why they paid you. When they walk away, they're going to be like, that was money well spent. My lawyer had me prepared. I was ready to go. Another tip, give the client kind of a a little quick note about how to request the DL 123 form. I think a lot of people are worried about contacting their insurance company because they don't want to notify their insurance company they got charged with a DWI. And I mean, you can't have them giving false information to their insurance company. But I think telling them that you need a DL 123 for your limited driving privilege, a pretrial or post conviction, it's okay to say, there are other situations where somebody needs a DL 123. This is not some sort of like special type of proof of insurance that is specific to a DWI case. You just need to call and tell them that you're in need of a DL 123. So small things like that, just being able to communicate, again, from the client's perspective, they're thinking, what are other people thinking about me? How can you kind of help them to see uh, that they're, making something out to be maybe more than it is? Again, not even having this concern expressed by the client. Another tip: offer to write a letter to the employer with character language in it. So I've written letters to employers for all types of reasons, both pre conviction and post conviction, or even post having the case disposed of. I've written all types of letters. Again, without kind of getting into the technical language of the letter, I mean, a lot of times it's just, I've been hired by Mr. Smith on his DWI case, and this is all with the client's permission and at their request. But, I've been hired by Mr. Smith to represent them on a DWI charge. We're currently in the process of getting discovery to determine how to proceed forward with the case. My client has engaged in XYZ things since retaining me on the case, and has done everything that I've asked him to do to be prepared to handle this charge. So again, that language is going to very much depend on where the case is in terms of procedural timeline, what the kind of intent of the letter is. But being able to write a letter on behalf of your client, just explaining, hey, I'm involved in this case, we're trying to figure out what to do, moving forward, that can be a powerful thing for your client. Also, I have clients that will ask, should I get a character letter for court? And I think, again, on a level 5, low possible sentence level, I think, in the past, I would have said, not necessary. Don't worry about it. We're not going to need that. Don't have somebody waste their time. I think that's bad advice. I think it makes sense to get character letters. And again, it's partially about the emotional response of uplifting your client in the courtroom. If you have a case that is going to be for a sentencing hearing, after plea or upon being found guilty, if you have these character letters that you can read from in open court and reference and say, let me tell you about my client and what other people in the community think about them, and then read that letter aloud in the courtroom, it can be powerful. I've seen clients come to tears over the words that have come from their spouse, their pastor, their employer, a friend, whatever it might be. These can be powerful opportunities to speak to this person's character, even if they've read the letter beforehand. And you are getting somebody who really knows this person to then be able to speak to their character, so they know them better than you do, and you don't have to do the work. It's not to say that you shouldn't do the work, but you literally have somebody else writing, this expose of how, big an impact that John or Molly have had in the community, and speaking to that character point. So ask for character letters. Read the characters aloud. Don't just present them to the judge. Don't just walk up and say, Judge, I have a few character letters. The judge may or may not read the character letters. If you walk up, they're busy. This is district court. But if you read it aloud, you have now affirmed that person's character in open court. You have been the vehicle by which that person's what are other people thinking about me? You help to answer that question in the right way if you're reading that aloud. So here's my final tip, and this is a simple one. This is one that you can't necessarily, I don't think, use in the consultation, but I think at the conclusion of a case, this can be a really powerful thing to tell a client. Tell your client if this is justified, that you are proud of them. If your client has done a lot of work, if they have, uh, you know, again, kept their career on track, they have taken care of all of the items that you told them to take care of. Maybe they spent a significant time in inpatient treatment. Maybe they've been sober for 6 months. Maybe they've been wearing a continuous alcohol monitoring device. Maybe they've been regularly attending AA. Maybe their sponsor was there to speak on their behalf. Maybe they've gotten a new and better job since the beginning time frame of the case. Whatever the kind of advancement in that person's life, after court, kind of at the conclusion of representation, tell your client you're proud of them. That those words of affirmation can really change the trajectory of somebody's life. They can be emotionally powerful words for somebody that really has tried to make sure that they were dotting all their I's, crossing all their T's, or maybe even more importantly, trying to get their life in the right direction. If they're doing a good job of that, if they are working to get things corrected, to get things on the right course, acknowledge that. Tell your clients you're proud of them. I really think this is game changing. I really do. I think that if we want to deliver an amazing experience, if we want to have our clients back and communicate to our clients that we have their back, we have to show them how we are going to go to war for them in upholding their character and helping them to answer that subliminal question of what are other people thinking about me the right way. Look forward to speaking with you again next time.